in our hands. Here we stand. I'm a teacher, I'm black, and I'm a man.
In demand,
Hard,
in demand,
intelligent,
in demand,
integrity.
in demand.
In Demand. Teach, mentor, volunteer.
Welcome back to another quarantined edition of the In Demand Podcast. We have one guest you already know, Mr. Ryan Wallace, and we have another guest with us, Ryan Neloms. Let me just let you guys start with Ryan. Just introduce yourself. Tell me, tell the audience, people that's viewing, who you are and what you do, man.
Okay. My name is Ryan Neloms. Currently, I'm working at Grand Valley State University. There, I'm an assistant director for event services and student life. My background is in social work. Got my master's in social work in 2015. So ever since then, I've been working in the community, working with youth. Before I got to the school scene, I was working in the juvenile detention center at Kent County. So that's a little bit about me.
All right. And what's your position at Grand Valley again?
Assistant director of event services and student life.
All right. So what does that entail, man? What do you do?
So I am in charge of the programming on our campus. I advise our campus activities board. Along with, I also am responsible for the operations of our student union on campus. With that, I also, on the side, I co-facilitate our Black Male Scholars Program, which is a retention program for Black males on campus.
All right, cool. All right, and then Mr. Ryan Wallace, you don't need an introduction, but man, tell the audience who may not know who you are and what it is that you do.
Rob Wallace, program director for EMU Upward Bound. I work in the Engage at EMU. Engage at EMU is the community wing, the community interaction wing of Eastern Michigan University, where we facilitate partnerships with the community to impact and serve. I also participate heavily with In Demand as well.
Indeed.
I'm also a recording engineer by trade. I engage with multiple organizations in service to the community, including Washtenaw County My Brother's Keeper, the Promise Initiative in Ypsilanti, as well as a number of other projects. I'm also a PhD student at Eastern Michigan University in urban education. My focus is on hip-hop pedagogy and music production programs that are both formal and informal.
Indeed. Man, hip-hop pedagogy. Man, who would have thought 30 years ago, who would have thought that would have even been something, man?
I read something recently that talked a guy named Bakari Kitwana. He wrote a book, and he talked about the hip hop generation, and he says that the hip hop generation was born between 1967 and 1984. Right. And from what he was talking about, that makes a lot more sense to me than the whole Generation X millennial kind of conversation, because what I'm finding is I view things through a hip hop lens. And I try to make sense out of complex ideas by using what I know about hip hop, because that is the literacy that I grew up with. So I'm anxious to share that more and more with kids.
Yeah, man. I mean, you know what? I mean, that does make sense when we talk about millennials, Generation X, the boomers, to have that in there, the hip hop generation. I mean, that's a shared cultural experience for a whole generation of people. So, I mean, I'm definitely that's a whole nother episode, man, talking about hip hop generation. Yeah. So Absolutely. Right now, what I'm going to talk about is this generation right now. I guess this would be the COVID generation.
Wow.
The COVID-19 generation, because our whole existence has been upended within just a couple months. It's like Thanos snapped on March 13th, and, right. and we had a whole new existence, man. And so we talking about our babies now that's in high school, that are seniors in high school, the class of 2020 that will be freshmen in college next year, man. So I guess before we get into that, I mean, I'm wondering, man, what's going on your campuses right now, as far as the winter semester wrapping up, and then the prospects of the spring and summer semester. What are some things that's going on right now on your prospective campuses?
Yeah. So on Grand Valley's campus currently, everything has moved to remote learning. Campus itself is closed, but all classes are now currently online. Everybody is working remotely from home. All staff and faculty are still trying to work with students and help them get through the end of this winter semester. We're actually in finals right now. So.
Okay. The finals. All right.
I think.
Go ahead.
I think for us, yes, we've also primarily moved over to an online format. But a lot of what we're doing is, we're all kind of at the ready to determine what's next. I think one of the things that was most comforting when this event happened was the behavior of educators, true educators, because it was schools that immediately, as this unfolded, schools were immediately creating contingency plans to be able to continue to serve children and families. And there wasn't a lot of waiting to hear about what was going to happen, what needed to happen. It was schools passing out food and clothes and materials to families. It was schools breaking down their laptop carts and getting kids laptops. And I think that we're at this stage where we've kind of stabilized from the initial rush of everything. Obviously, you have families and kids that's going through a lot, but I think on our campus, it's kind of like a wait and see kind of situation. We've created some contingencies based on a few different scenarios. For example, Upward Bound, we've looked at, we customarily have a 6-week summer program where during that 6 week we travel out of state. We've created a complete contingency to do everything online with the hopes that kids will still participate, because even if campus is open, how many families will feel good, and feel comfortable sending their kids out at that point. So I think it's just about planning to adjust based on whatever comes about.
And one thing you mentioned, man, about how teachers and schools kicked in even before they got any mandates or any instructions from the state. Schools and teachers started doing their own thing. Trying to make sure that our kids were still learning or still felt a level of comfort and consistency. And so, I think that's just the heart of a teacher. Anyway, that's what we do. I mean, it's almost like, that's our mode that we're always in. Like, hey, we need to be able to have those resources, and if they're not there, we still make a way. And I think that's what we saw with this. When this started, you saw teachers still trying to go forward and make a way. There's a teacher.
Absolutely.
There's a teacher from my school. I mean, immediately, literally that. I think we found out things were going to be closed on the weekend, March 14th and 15th. And by, I want to say, actually, on that Saturday, she started uploading herself, reading bedtime stories for her. She's an elementary teacher, and she started, just reading bedtime stories to the kids, man. And that was Miss Campbell. But that's just the heart of a teacher. Like, hey, I'm gonna still find a way to interact with you guys. I want you guys to feel comfortable and safe as well. So what other comforting thing, what better way to comfort a young student than a nightly bedtime story from someone that they know.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So with that being said, man, I know Ryan, man, you work with students on campus, and Rod, you work with students on campus and students who are about to come on campus, right?
Sure. Absolutely.
Teenagers and stuff like that. So I'm wondering, Ryan, man, what feedback are you getting from students on campus?
A lot of students are adjusting to the online model. They're trying to find a way to stay focused and stay centered. It's not something that they're used to. So that's been a real struggle so far. And also with the faculty, a lot of faculty are not used to online teaching. So it's been an adjustment on both ends, and both parties have been had to be flexible. I know there have been some efforts to put in options for students to do no credit for courses versus taking the letter grade, if that would benefit them more as well. But it's kind of been all over the place. Some classrooms has been working really good and students enjoy it and they still getting that learning, and in some other classes it doesn't transfer over that well.
I would say that you know, the kids who we work with, Upward Bound primarily serves, it's under the umbrella of TRIO programs, which is federally funded to serve low-income and first-generation families. And, you know, our kids and our families are remarkably resilient. Right. And I think that in some cases they are more resilient than people who ain't been through nothing. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, there is fear. There is, you know, to a large degree, there's disappointment. Mm-hmm. Just because there may be a lack of understanding of the vastness of this issue. And some are struggling to determine next steps. I know for our students, we've been, you know, I'm blessed to have some fantastic people that I work with who, for our students who are enrolled in the program, they've already been through application processes, seeing their award letter, knowing what kind of awards they're getting from colleges, so on and so forth. So we coach our students through that process to get them in school. But overall, there's a great deal of uncertainty. And I think that as much as we deal with the mechanics of them being students and being, you know, online, and there are best practices for students that we can talk about for them too in that realm, but getting them to the point where psychologically they're prepared to move forward with such a degree of uncertainty, I think is our primary job as educators at this point.
And so, I mean, let me ask that, like you mentioned about getting them prepared for online. I mean, what does that look like? How would you get students prepared for online learning?
I think that, you know, we attempt to build time management as a skill for students, and it's so absolutely imperative at this point, because, you know, when everything is online, you have to really create time parameters for yourself to get things done and have a firm grasp of your due dates and things of that nature. Above and beyond that, making sure that you understand, and this is, you know, just something for students who are moving towards that online realm, you have to make sure that your communication is above board. And I think, you know, when you have, I never discount the intelligence of our kids, but I do recognize the fact that sometimes things can be lost in translation when you communicating strictly via words. Mm-hmm. So making sure that you govern your tone, making sure that you're proofreading as you read things, making sure that you behave in a way that illustrates your commitment still, because just because you're not, you know, you come into class in a college class every day and paying attention and participating, it illustrates commitment. And as we know, that commitment that you illustrate gives you a certain amount of currency in the classroom, mm-hmm. you know, with the teacher when you may encounter a tough time, or you may, you know, you may not necessarily be all that you can be at that moment. It'll continue to illustrate that same thing when you having these online dealings with people. And so that's what I would share with students just about being successful online. You have to be able to manage your time. You have to be able to, you know, really separate and set yourself down and really get focused. And sometimes it's difficult when you're in a house with, you know, brothers and sisters and all that kind of stuff, but you got to kind of find you got to find a space to get the job done, because things are not going to always be like this. Yeah. So it's important that you can just stem the tide of this transition.
Yeah. I would say also, be sure to hold yourself accountable, because it's easy when classes are online now to, you know what, maybe I won't tune into this session and kind of fall behind. But that's when it comes to taking that accountability on yourself. And then also I would say establish a routine at home, act as if you are going into class, get dressed, and prepare just like you would do if you were going to the class physically.
You mentioned about the emotional well-being. I mean, you guys mentioned about the emotional well-being of not just the academics, but the emotional and social well-being of students as well. Ryan, man, you know, just being an assistant director of student life, what things are you guys doing to ensure that, you know, that whole social experience in college, there's still some type of semblance of that, you know, even amongst this quarantine time, and then even after the quarantine is lifted, you know, to make sure that that college life is still intact?
Yeah. So currently we've been providing online programming with our campus activities board to where we're doing online bingo, and to doing interactions with Instagram Live, Facebook Live, doing viewings on Netflix of certain movies. So still trying to keep that engagement with their peers and to kind of give them that break to decompress and relax, because we know that's also very important to staying engaged as well.
All right. And Mr. Wallace, man, I gotta believe that hip hop plays a part in all this, man. What music, creativity, man, what part of that does that play in continuing that social emotional experience of college or well-being? You know, does hip hop pedagogy have a place right now?
You know, I'll take it a step further. I think, you know, in the broader context of this event that we're all encountering, and we're all encountering this at the same time.
That's right.
Worldwide, there's not a person that it does not have the capacity to affect. And I truly believe, you know, that if I could just say, it was the efforts of people in healthcare, the first responders, teachers, the people who are in the service industry. Those people literally have kept life moving, obviously. Yeah. When it comes to creating art, I feel like art has allowed us to maintain a semblance of sanity in all of this. Mm-hmm. Because art has given us an outlet to be able to move our minds away from just the sheer gravity of what we're dealing with. And I think it has a strong role to play. You know, I look forward to, I'll just say that I've been really excited about seeing the producer battles. Yeah. Seeing the DJ, battles and DJs collaborating and literally going on at 11 o'clock on Saturday and playing until 2 o'clock at night. That's right, man. And saying at this time it's this DJ.
Was D-Nice the first to pop that off, or?
I mean, I don't know if he was first, and people were doing it before, but the emphasis on it now is so much bigger. So I see schools, I see colleges engaging kids in a lot of different things. One thing that I would challenge our tech developers to do is, I think that, if this is something that we have to continue to do, I see something almost being like The Sims coming to, turning into kind of a way to, and I may be giving away a secret, or I could be making $1 million off this.
You know what I'm saying?
But, I mean, people's avatars and people's social media presence having a different way to engage with each other that still gives us those social benefits without physically being there. Because physically, it may not ever be the way that it was. Yeah. But, one of the things that I was going to talk about is the social media, as much as we've seen social media change the world in the last 10 years, it's about to change it even more, because this is the predominant way that we interacting at this point. And you have people in our generation, the hip hop generation, where our verbal ability to interact was primary for us, and now it's this. So, I think universities are being very creative, and I actually met with, I have other administrators in my program, and we also have a set of tutors who are students, who are actually college students. And I told them, I'm not going to sit back and try to plan for what this looks like. I'm going to ask you, because you guys have been born into this generation, and you're very comfortable communicating this way. And although I'm well versed in it, this is, to a large degree, much of all they've known for the majority of their educational life. So who would I be if I didn't go to them and say, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? But I think they built for it, and we always find a way. We always find a way to keep it moving. So,
and Rod, man, it's important. A couple things you said, man, as far as the use of technology, and I would go further to talk about gaming. I did not know. I mean, I learned a lot about video games during this time, just as far as that the NBA has a video game league. Is that right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't, yeah, 2K league, and so that's been something, that way that people have been able, even our sport, the sports figures, they've been able to interact and talk and play and do all this stuff. And people tuned in to watch it. My kids were very excited about tuning in and watching their favorite basketball players play video games live. So just the way that we look at gaming and like you said, social media and things like that, and maybe there's a merger within that field of education of how those things can actually be utilized. So yeah.
Yeah, there's actually a lot of schools now that's looking into building esports programs.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Wow.
Eastern has an esports team. And what I'll do for you, they're doing mini camps for a number of different things at Eastern over the summer. There's a PDF that I have that I can share that you can link to the YouTube video for this podcast.
Okay.
And they're doing screenwriting courses. They're doing esports. They're doing coding. Because the silver lining to this is we all have the ability, or most of us who have the access have the ability to develop and build skills during this time. There are people who are learning languages. There are people who are learning HTML. There are people who are learning how to produce music, and all those things. And I think that if we can keep our minds moving, I think that we can walk away from this and be better.
And first of all, let me talk a little bit more about that esports. So you're saying that there are colleges who are providing, let us say, should I say, funding scholarship funds for esports for students who are involved?
That's correct.
And they have teams as well?
Yeah,
absolutely.
So these are esports athletes?
Absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely. My son plays, my son is 8, and I allow my son to play in spurts because I do believe that it develops his hand-eye coordination as well as his ability to read. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of research that says you got to really govern that though.
Yeah.
He says that's kind of, he plays sports, he plays basketball, but he says that's kind of what he wants to do. He wants to play video games competitively. And, if that's what he wants to do, I'm going to try to encourage him to do it as well as other things, obviously. But there's the funny thing about it is when we were young, it was like, yeah, right, whatever. You're going to play Mario or something like that.
Yeah.
But now there's a space and a place for that because it does allow him to learn coding. It allows him to learn a number of different things that is a part of our culture. And I think one thing that bothers me is, we've been talking about this digital revolution for 20 years in education. And now, now it's in our face. This was our Pearl Harbor for digital education. So, now that we confronted with it, we're behind in our minds. The kids, they already on top of it.
Yeah. No, that's amazing to me, man. The fact, I think back to when we got Ryan about 10, 12 years, man. But I remember being back in high school, Rod, where we were told to learn golf because golf courses are the places where business deals are made, right?
Right.
But now, you can quite honestly strike a deal over playing a video game. You know what I'm saying? You can come in contact with people, from various sectors over video games.
Conceivably. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I think that, times are changing. I can see that where, even at I don't know if they have it at the high school level yet, where there's competitive gaming.
Yeah, they definitely do.
Okay. Yeah.
They do. And
we throw a big conference up at Grand Valley where all the high schools come and they compete in our Fieldhouse arena. Actually, before COVID came out, our esports student org, they were going to throw a big tournament on campus, but that got derailed.
Yeah.
And don't sleep on robotics either.
Yeah.
Right. Robotics being a little bit more physical.
Right.
Competitive robotics is scandalous.
Yeah,
Making a lot of money and getting a lot of kids in school for free.
Indeed.
And, I've seen some outstanding things involving competitive robotics.
Yeah. And to me, I think they're not. To me, it's related as well, though, too. Coding for a game. encoding for a robot to interact with on a competitive level, there's some similarities, so I can see a nice exchange between both, interests. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So, all right. That was exciting for me, man. I used to be a gamer, but I think at the age of 26, I stopped playing. I had gotten married, and it was it was kind of.
Hey, I still play.
Hey, man. My
2K
game
allows me. It's nothing like coming home and having a long day and running you a nice, quiet game of 2K and getting your mind right so you can continue on.
Yeah, man.
So,
I just, I just remember I remember playing and not playing. My game used to be Civilization. That was my game.
Oh yeah.
I used to love those. I used to love that game. Yeah. What would you? Let me see. What would the incoming freshmen right now, on your campuses, and I know it's all up in the air, but, what should they expect for the fall? I mean, this is a very intense time. There's a lot of expectations. That's one. I remember being a freshman, about to start. Being a senior in high school, about to be a freshman in college. It was exciting. What should should that excitement still be there, and what should these excited incoming freshmen expect for the fall?
Yeah, it's definitely still up in the air, but I think they should definitely still be excited. We're still in the midst of planning transitions programs and orientation programs, so that work is being done now. I would urge them to also be flexible, because like you said, we don't know how things are going to be come the fall, but just be willing and be flexible to possibly be online.
I think that they should expect for there to be a number of policy changes when they get to campus. There are some paradigm shifts that we're all going to bear witness to and think critically about. I think from a student organization, from a student, and you can tell me if you agree with this, but from a student life perspective as well, I think that there may be a renewed focus on like civic awareness and student voice being employed in order to make change and to govern things, because I think any university would be best served going into September, sharing very clearly that we all trying to build this plane as we flying it.
Yeah, buddy.
And opening that voice to say, tell us what you think. I also would say, if we move to a full-fledged online role, how important it is to really read thoroughly, because we're going to go back to in lieu of these conversations online, being interested in reading these policies, reading these syllabi, reading everything very thoroughly is going to be very important. That's extreme. That's going to be extremely important moving forward. And then be accessible, be willing to be a part of the online culture, because universities, if they're worth their weight, they're gonna do everything they can to try to build culture online. So these games that you mentioned earlier, people playing bingo and stuff, participate, be open to it, and don't just hide. Don't just hide.
Yeah, I will also say advocate for yourself. Especially since you're not in the classroom anymore, you're going to really have to reach out to your advisors and your professors and let them know when you need help in a certain area, and don't be nervous or what's the word I'm looking for?
Self-advocate.
I can't think right now, but just realize that. Yeah, self-advocate, but just realize that everybody is going through this together. So there's no reason to feel ashamed or guilt or anything like that. So, because there are things in place to help everyone at whatever level they're coming in at. We've even provided laptops for certain students that might not have that access or affordable internet. So just be willing to advocate for yourself. And I know we've been talking a lot about online, but you can also still pick up the phone and make a phone call. We're still answering phone calls. So that's something that you could do as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. And so, as far as students being able to reach out, I mean, I think I appreciate what you're saying, that there's still, although there's no face-to-face contact, they're still able to reach out to various organizations on campus.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think that's important. If I come on campus and I don't know who are these organizations that I can reach out to. If I'm a young black man on campus and I'm looking for some support or anything like that, or whatever it is, if I'm looking for those supports, how might I go about finding those supports?
I think that it's definitely important for students to be able to do that. I think so I guess to answer that, you have to be confident enough to build your network on campus. Mm-hmm. Because, in working with, I was a student at the university that I'm now an administrator at. Mm-hmm. And my viewpoint, maybe because of my experience, but it's so different in that I didn't interact with nobody on that side of the table. All I did was I went to the hall to register for classes. If I was sick, I went to the health center, and I dealt with my professors. Really didn't use office hours, this, that, and third. But what I want the incoming freshmen to understand is that going to college is an opportunity for you to develop a network of relationships that will benefit you for the rest of your life. And there are people who are there who have an interest in helping you. So not having fear of looking stupid or not having fear of not knowing something is, you have to let that go relatively quickly. But in the same token, universities, especially in lieu of what we're encountering now, have to take the effort and have to make the effort to make sure that they're reaching out and addressing kids. And, these are kids. I think that the unfortunate truth is, when we went to college, Quan, the expectation of our maturity might have looked a little bit different.
Indeed.
But I view the freshmen of now as truly being children still.
Yeah.
And this may be just because I'm old, but universities have to. One thing I've really pushed at Eastern is, how do we systemically reach out to kids who are first generation and don't have the support system to know that, when this is wrong, you go see this person, or when this is wrong, or they don't have those paradigms in place and that support network at home. So it's twofold. Kids have to self-advocate, but universities also got to step up and make sure that they're calling kids, reaching out to kids beyond email to say, hey, just coming to check on you, see how you're doing.
Yeah, I would say for any student of color or black male stepping on the campus in fall, check your university's the Division of Inclusion and Equity website. A lot of information is there that can get you connected to the resources that you need. Like, for example, our Black Male Scholars Program, all our contacts are on there, as well as our meeting times and resources that are available, whether it might be financial or social, anything like that. So just make sure you're checking in with those. I know we're still talking about doing, I don't know if they do it at Eastern, but we do affinity orientation. So we do like a Black excellence orientation or Asian student orientation. So those things are still going to be put into place. So just make sure you're keeping an eye out for things like that and engage. When you see it, reach out to it. It's important because it helps really build the community.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and lastly, I don't want to forget about the parents. What could what should parents be doing at this moment as this unprecedented transition to college into to new life? What should parents be doing right now in assisting their incoming freshmen into making that transition properly?
I'll say I think parents and students should actually be looking at, if it's a university you're looking to attend or that you've already committed to attend to, look and see what they're doing now. See if they're living out those principles, how they're acting during a pandemic, if that's the place for you. And I think that'll tell you a lot about the culture that you're walking into. Because I know a lot of tours got canceled, so a lot of students are going to be going into the fall without ever maybe stepping onto campus. So a lot of schools have virtual tours set up. Do that, and just if you're able to, try to maybe get in contact with someone that's currently going there, and just get a feel and sense for what you'll be walking into.
I think both parents and students at this point, in lieu of what's going on, it's very important that they build their networks of resources. And I sit here understanding the privilege that I have to be able to take off work and continue to get paid and sit up and hold Zoom meetings and have conversations and type emails and stuff like that. And my kids can run around all day and be homeschooled. I recognize everybody don't have that. But the good news is there are several community organizations that are doing the work to get people what they need at this point. And sometimes it's difficult for us to admit when we need support or we need help. And it's only going to get tougher in the coming weeks, to be honest, if things remain status quo. So for parents, there are organizations and groups around here that are going to have this on their radar in order to provide families and kids with additional resources and materials they might need just to move into their dorms, or just to give them anything that they need. For students, make sure you build in your network of other students around you that may be going to the same university. That's really important to just keep things moving in the right direction. Also, for parents, making sure that they're listening and not getting too frustrated with homeschooling is really important. And making themselves an asset to their communities as well is important, if they can.
Yeah. And I would add that, for all of us, parents, students, that emotional support is going to be needed. It's needed now, but definitely after this is over with. If we know somebody that passed away, or somebody who that we know of that passed away, or and people who had challenges during this time where they may have lost someone that wasn't because of COVID-19. Because of COVID, we all been impacted, whether or not we can pay our last respects to people that's passed away. And so,
absolutely,
all this stuff that's going on, we make fun of stuff, laugh, get going, keep it moving, but long-term effects, we're gonna definitely need those support groups, those support systems. And so I would say for parents, definitely for students, when you're on campus, hey, it's gonna be a time, whether it's virtually or in person, that you're gonna be able to sit down and talk through what you're processing, and talk through it, work through it, because this is something that's impacted all of us, in more ways than one. And so, definitely don't shun away from that therapeutic process. It's definitely going to be needed in the conclusion of all this. So, that being said, man, I look forward to when we. I'm sorry, you was going to say something?
I was going to ask something. Yeah, I want to speak to students too that that are currently still applying for colleges. That might be on the cusp. Just go ahead and do it, because a lot of schools have lowered their requirements. I know, like the SAT and SAT, schools are not able to do that right now. A lot of schools have lifted that requirement and are not requiring you to do that that test at all. So just make sure that, and don't let finances also get in the way. A lot of students have already filled out that FAFSA, but if you say that a change in income has come or need, like a lot of schools will be able to still help you with that financial part. One of the good things, I know I have a lot of student employees, and we were able to give out financial hardship scholarships to our students because they were out of work. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that was the blessing in itself. So just make sure that you don't let this deter you, still apply. Those opportunities are out there.
And I think that's important to iterate. I mean, there was a trend before all this happened of universities not necessarily using standardized testing as far as for admission, So this hastened the process for a lot of other schools to adapt that for this year as well. And so, I mean, I didn't even think about that. This is something that for those who were, on the cusp of thinking about going to college or not, hey, this is an inroads where you don't necessarily have to go through the traditional route of having a certain score or anything like that. So, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and a lot of admission deadlines have been extended with that.
Yeah.
And some schools are just on a rolling admission. So,
so yeah, I mean, we've been on here for almost an hour now. So I'm gonna go ahead and conclude it, man. I thank you, brothers, for sacrificing your time today and being on here to kind of talk about with this upcoming freshman class. I mean, this conversation can take go down all kind of avenues and be built upon, but we at least wanted to kind of, have this conversation a little bit, add to the conversations that's already going on. For those of you that haven't seen or noticed yet, the young man, Mr. Ryan Neloms, that's my actual blood brother. So you can see the resemblance a little bit. Yeah,
I'm the better looking one.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, so, so with that being said, Mr. Wallace, thank you for your time, brother. We will be tuning in for your Grove Studios interview. And we'll see you guys next time. Peace.